Hello, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall. I'm Lucy with American Farmland Trust, and I'm pleased to be on the call tonight with President and CEO John Piotti and special guest, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the progress that the USDA has made on critical agricultural issues, especially conservation and climate-smart practices, as well as future opportunities and challenges in farming and ranching. We'll also be taking your questions live. If you have a question for the speakers, just press 0 on your phone keypad now to be added to the queue. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Again, hello and good evening. Welcome to tonight's telephone town hall. My name is Lucy, and thank you for joining us. We will be joined by AFT's President and CEO, John Piotti, and special guest, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. Right now, we're dialing out to thousands of people so that they can hear about our progress on critical agricultural issues and future opportunities and challenges. We're going to get started in just a moment, but for those of you just joining who want to ask a question on tonight's event, all you have to do is press 0 on your phone keypad to be added to the queue. We're going to try to take as many questions as possible. Again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall. I'm Lucy with American Farmland Trust, and I'm pleased to be on the call tonight with President and CEO John Piotti and special guest, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the progress that the USDA has made on critical agricultural issues, especially conservation and climate-smart practices, as well as future opportunities and challenges in farming and ranching. We'll also be taking your questions live. If you have a question for the speakers, just press 0 on your phone keypad now to be added to the queue. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Again, my name is Lucy, and thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall with AFT President and CEO John Piotti and special guest, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack. Right now, we're dialing out to thousands of people so that they can hear about our progress on critical agricultural issues and future opportunities and challenges. We're going to get started in just a moment, but for those of you just joining who want to ask a question on tonight's event, all you have to do is press 0 on your phone keypad to be added into the queue. We're going to try and take as many questions as possible. Hello and welcome everyone to tonight's telephone town hall. I'm Lucy with American Farmland Trust, and I'm pleased to be on the call tonight with President and CEO John Piotti and special guest, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the progress that the USDA has made on critical agricultural issues, especially conservation and climate-smart practices, as well as future opportunities and challenges in farming and ranching. We'll also be taking your questions live. If you have a question for the speakers, just press 0 on your phone keypad now to be added to the queue. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. And now, I'd like to turn it over to AFT President and CEO, John Piotti.
Thanks, Lucy. Today, we're so pleased to be here for a third time with our very special guest, Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack. The format for this event is that I'm going to say a few words up front and then give the Secretary 10 minutes for some upfront comments, and then I'm going to ask him some questions, and then we'll open it up to your questions. And as Lucy mentioned, you can get in the queue to ask a question by pushing 0 on your phone at any time, and a member of AFT staff will be there to connect with you and put you on the list. Now, given the Secretary's presence, we know we are drawing some people who are not already AFT members, and so for their benefit, I'm going to say a few words up front about American Farmland Trust. Many people are familiar with AFT's iconic green and white bumper sticker, no farms, no food, but know not much about the organization that's behind it. American Farmland Trust was created 44 years ago, back in 1980, and we were the first national organization that viewed agriculture and environment as two sides of the same coin. Back then, farmers and environmentalists were often at odds, and AFT was formed to pull those two worlds together. Perhaps because we were operating where no one else had, we had an outsized impact almost immediately. with passage of the Farmland Protection Policy Act in 1981. And then AFT formed and led the coalition that incorporated the first conservation title into the Farm Bill in 1985. And that, in turn, has led to all that's happened with conservation programs since then, including, I might say, the game-changing recent investments in climate-smart practices advanced by Secretary Vilsack and the current administration. But AFT didn't only focus on federal policy. We helped 29 states develop farmland protection programs, and even more states adopt or refine current use taxation programs on which so many farmers and ranchers rely. I could go on and on, but in summary, I'll simply say that American Farmland Trust has helped permanently protect 8 million acres of farmland, advance regenerative practices on millions more, and provided support or services that have made a difference to over 500,000 farm families. This year, we will provide direct services to over 20,000 farmers and ranchers. We take a holistic approach to agriculture, one that involves the land itself, the practices employed on that land, and the people who steward that land. And we're also unique in that we have a strong research arm that we use to guide public policy. Yet at the same time, we do real work out in the field to stay grounded in the realities of farming. It's a testament to AFT's success over the years that today so many environmental groups view farmers as critical partners, and that so many farm organizations recognize the importance of conservation practices. Now, I apologize to all the AFT members on the phone who already knew all of that, but if you are not a member, I urge you to go to our website and join. It's critically important that we engage as many people as possible so you know about our latest research and so you can respond to our action alerts. But beyond that, we'll make sure you get all the No Farms, No Food bumper stickers you want. Wow, it's a real pleasure and privilege to have U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack with us tonight. To the agriculture community, he needs no introduction. For others, I'll summarize by saying that before serving as Secretary in the Biden administration, he served in the same capacity for all 8 years under President Obama. And prior to that, he was Iowa's governor for 2 terms. He's as well-versed as anyone about the challenges and opportunities facing farming. He has joined me for 2 prior calls, the last one in December of 2022, and those calls have been extremely engaging and informative, and I'm sure today's will be the same. Mr. Secretary, I can't thank you enough for being here. There are so many things on my mind that I want to ask you about, but I want to begin hearing from you. Let's start with whatever message you wish to deliver.
Hey, John, thanks very much. I want to certainly start by acknowledging and appreciating the American Farmland Trust and the fact that we have a shared goal, which is to create opportunity to keep farmland operational and to keep farmers farming. I can tell you without question that fighting towards that goal is not always easy. In fact, doing some research, I've noted that since January of 1981, we in this country have lost 545,000 farms and 155.6 million acres of farmland that wasn't farmland in 1981 that is not being farmed today. That is the equivalent of the loss of every farm in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Missouri, and Colorado. And it is the equivalent of the land mass of Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Maryland, and part of Virginia. We can't let this trend continue. It's time to have a system that works for everybody and that starts by creating value and opportunity for producers and communities. I think that we have been a very pro-farmer administration. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, part of President Biden's Investing in America agenda, as you noted, the single largest investment in climate and clean energy solutions in the world and in the history of the country, we have a once-in-a-lifetime generation opportunity to build critical infrastructure, protect communities from wildfire and extreme heat, and drive this climate-smart agriculture effort as well as renewable energy. As a result of the work of this administration and Congress, we saw the American Rescue Plan passed, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and along with our use of the Commodity Credit Corporation, we're now in a position to create a framework where other options are available to producers to stay in business and stay on the land. Thanks to the IRA, there are more farmers and more acres enrolled in voluntary conservation practices than at any single point in our history. Let me repeat that. Thanks to the IRA, there are more farmers and more acres enrolled in voluntary conservation practice than at any single point in our history. In total, the Inflation Reduction Act has provided $19.5 billion over 5 years to support USDA's oversubscribed conservation programming. This includes $4.95 billion over 5 years for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. Earlier today, through funding from the IRA and the Farm Bill funding, we announced our FY24 Regional Conservation Partnership Program awards. NRCS is announcing an historic $1.5 billion investment in 92 regional conservation partnership projects across 40 states. We saw an historic demand for RCPP. We had over $4 billion in complete and competitive RCPP applications that we couldn't fund because Congress has not provided the funding to keep up with producer interest in climate-smart and sustainable agriculture. But through the RCPP, we are able to extend the footprint of conservation and climate-smart practices through, as you know, private-public partnerships that cultivate collaboration and leverage collective resources. AFT has been a partner, a terrific partner, on numerous RCP projects since the program's inception. And I'm proud to be able to tell you today that we're building on that partnership with an award to the Minnesota Farmland Protection Project. The Minnesota Farmland Protection Project will work with the Iroquois Valley Farms to accelerate the adoption of organic-focused NRCS conservation and land management practices across 140 farms and 750,000 acres of agricultural land. It's going to create a model for the deployment of organic management under our Conservation Practice Standard 823. This project will leverage new software platform through a partner farm raise and technical assistance through a number of partners, including Marble Seed, to recruit, support, and monitor farmers' adoption of practices. Will increase acres under conservation practices and increase access to funding and land for historically underserved and limited resource producers. AFT will also partner closely with NRCS on easements, soil health, program implementation, and state-level agreements. They've also, I note, have been a recipient of our increasing land, capital, and market access program, which was also funded through the IRA. Our partnership with AFT is critical for our ability to ensure that we provide boots on the ground to deliver conservation and preservation and climate assistance, and to ensure that we have the latest science and data driving this work. Now, I'd be remiss on this call if I didn't raise another area that's pretty important to all of us, and that's the Farm Bill, which, as you know, funds important projects such as the RCP awards. The Farm Bill is a major opportunity for USDA programs. They're well suited and properly updated to address the most urgent challenges that are facing agriculture. Much like American farmers and ranchers committed to innovation and making U.S. agriculture the best it can be, we need the same of our Farm Bill in Congress. Historically, Congress has been able to put together and reach a bipartisan consensus to successfully pass this legislation and make it the best Farm Bill it can be, so farmers and rural communities aren't left with a lot of uncertainty. Now, we're eager to see Congress do its job so that USDA can start the massive undertaking of implementing this new Farm Bill. I would say time is of the essence. We need a Farm Bill now that works for the many and the most, not just the few, who've already made, frankly, some of the largest profits from agriculture. The Farm Bill needs to be one that is not leaving anyone behind, whether that be farmers concerned about losing their farms in tight times or working families struggling to get by. We're quickly running out of time this fall for this Congress to come together to address the Farm Bill in a bipartisan way. Either we have a real bipartisan deal on a new Farm Bill, or at a minimum an extension of the existing Farm Bill to prevent the very significant complications of reverting back to permanent law. Frankly, the longer we wait, the harder it is to get this done. A common sense, reasonable bipartisan approach is the only way to accomplish this, and this is what our farmers, rural communities, and hardworking families expect and deserve. Finally, I want to talk just a bit about our climate investments. Through our Partnership for Climate Smart Commodities initiative, USDA has invested over $3 billion since 2022 to expand markets for climate-smart commodities, leveraging the greenhouse gas benefits of climate-smart commodity production and providing a direct, meaningful benefit to production agriculture, including for small and underserved producers. Today, we have projects that are benefiting over 14,000 farms, reaching 3.2 million acres. And as a result of these projects, over 40 climate-smart commodities are already available in the marketplace to share with consumers today. We plan to share the lessons that are learned from these projects and partnerships with everyone in this country and around the world. We've already, as well, invested an additional $850 million in 2023 and up to $5.7 billion in 2024 in climate-smart conservation funding through our traditional normal programs and through the IRA funding. Since the implementation of the IRA funding, this climate-smart conservation assistance has helped over 28,500 farmers and ranchers apply conservation, I'll get this, to 361 million acres of land, on top of the conservation and climate-smart agricultural assistance available through normal programs. Now, in addition to this, we're also leading an international effort at Agricultural Innovation for Climate, our Aim for Climate effort. It continues to grow a network. It now includes over 600 partners in 56 countries that have mobilized an additional $17 billion in increased investment supporting climate-smart agriculture and food system innovation. So this Aim for Climate is obviously designed to increase and accelerate global innovation in agriculture and food systems in support of climate action. And the Aim for Climate partners are focused on driving more transformative climate action in the agricultural sector. Now, the good news is that this is a 5-year commitment. It ends next year, but we already have in place the Aim for Scale initiative, which is designed to take innovations that were located in the Aim for Climate effort and begin to invest in them to scale up. So that work on the international basis is going to continue. So it's been an extraordinary 3 years of investment, an extraordinary year of advancing the climate smart agenda, and American agriculture is responding, and we're excited about the potential between now and 2030, which is when the IRA funding potentially lapses. So happy to answer questions, and I went through that pretty quickly, but I know time is short and we want to answer as many questions as we can.
Well, what a great summary. There was an awful lot there, and I was taking notes as you were speaking. AFT all the time talks about farmland loss statistics. We talk about the current rate of loss, which is about 2,000 acres a day, 750,000 acres a year. But you putting it in perspective by talking about the land mass that we've lost by 1981, I'm going to have to I'm going to steal some of those talking points going forward. There's good stuff in there, but there's also good news, and I don't mean to. I want to get other people asking questions in here, but just for all the listeners out there, because of the kind of programs that USDA has put forward, the good news is the rate of loss has lessened since the 1980s. It's quite a bit less. Now it could pick up again, depending on what happens. People more interested in living in rural areas, solar development, and the like. But the programs that USDA has championed over the last few decades and have really accelerated in the last 3 years do make a difference. So I don't want anyone to not be hopeful. There's a lot of good things going on. Mr. Secretary, you mentioned many of them. You've talked a lot about some of the climate smart investments, which have been significant. You mentioned the RCPP announcements that just came out today, $1.5 billion to help farmers do what's right by the land. This is big stuff. And I guess my first question for you is, there's been so much that's happened in the last 3.5 years while you've been serving as secretary. But I'm curious if you could maybe remind us of some of the priorities that you set out to achieve. Maybe highlight an accomplishment or two beyond the long list that you just had. Maybe share if there's something you're proudest of. So a little bit about what you set out to do and how well you think your department has done.
Well, John, I'll tell you that the interesting thing about the Department of Agriculture is its vast portfolio of responsibility. I often amaze my other cabinet colleagues by being able to actually talk about virtually everything that they're doing, we're also doing in rural places. So if I'm talking to the HUD secretary, I can talk about our housing initiatives in rural development. If I'm talking to the energy secretary, I can talk about our work in renewable energy. Just take the renewable energy, for example. We've done 8,500 awards to farmers and small business owners in rural places to convert and to embrace renewable energy on their farm or in their business, helping to lower costs and helping to create potentially a new revenue source for those farm families. In addition, we are now in the process of investing $9.7 billion with local RECs, rural electric cooperatives, as they transition from fossil fuel-based power generation to more renewable sources. We're there to help them basically offset the cost of that transition with a significant number of projects that will impact 1 out of every 5 individuals who live, work, and raise their families in rural places. 20% of America's population in rural America is going to be impacted by just the work of this administration in that one program. And so we're proud of that. And what I'm really proud of is we've put a spotlight on the challenges within agriculture. And let me just take 2 seconds to explain this. We've had 3 of the best years in agricultural income in the history of the country. In fact, we had the best year in 2022. This year, it's off a little bit, but it's still above the 20-year historic average for income. Now, farmers out there don't necessarily feel that way, and here's why. Because of the concentration of the income within agriculture, the top 10% of agricultural farming operations represent about 180,000 farms. These are farms that sell more than $350,000 in sales every year, about 180,000 of them. About a third of them are owned and operated by investment banking operations and things of that nature. The other are owned by what you would consider family farming operations, but large scale. In that record year of 2022, those farms got 85% of the income. 85% of the income, which meant that 1.7 to 1.8 million farms that represent the other 90% of farms had to share 15% of the income, which explains why nearly 50% of farms didn't make any money at all, and roughly 40% made money, but the money that they needed to raise their families had to come from off-farm income. In fact, 88% of our farm families have to have off-farm income. So the challenge for us is to ask ourselves, why is it that the farm family has to work multiple jobs? Why can't the farm itself generate multiple sources of income? And that's where climate smart agriculture comes into play. That's where the bio-based economy and transitioning agricultural waste into new products that create new markets. That's where local and regional food systems, reducing the mileage that food travels, and supporting that has come from. So we've invested at USDA and will invest over the next 3 to 5 years, nearly $20 billion in a new system that basically speaks to the needs of the other 90% of farms. We need production agriculture, no question about it. We need to feed ourselves and the world. But we also need those farm families helping to populate, helping to support the local school, the local hospital, the local business. Why is that important? Because the disproportionate number of our military come from those rural communities. So if we shrink the population of rural America, we're shrinking the number of young people who are willing to put on the uniform. And that makes us less safe. And so it's important for us to create new ways for those farm families to generate multiple sources of income. So I'll give you one example, which I think is reflective. A dairy farm in Wisconsin basically takes the manure from that dairy operation, they put it in a digester, they take the methane and they sell the methane to a renewable natural gas provider in Wisconsin. That's income source number one. They take what's left, they use it for bedding. When the bedding is used up, they put it through another process and they create a phosphorus-based fertilizer and a nitrogen-based fertilizer. So they reduce their cost for fertilizer, and they also have excess to be able to sell to their friends and neighbors as additional fertilizer. What's left after all of that is water clean enough to discharge directly into the rivers and streams of Wisconsin, which have very high standards. Now, this is a farm family that also takes their dairy. They sell it to a larger processor, but they take a portion of it, they create their own cheese, and they sell it locally. So instead of getting 20 cents of the food dollar, they get 50 to 75 cents of the food dollar. Now, all of a sudden, this is an operation that can support multiple families because it doesn't just sell milk. It sells energy, it sells fertilizer, it sells cheese. And that's the future that we've been able to begin to create, the model we've been able to create as an alternative to the notion of getting big or getting out of the business. Yeah. That's what's going to preserve the farmland. So real excited about that and thrilled that the president and the vice president have been supportive of this effort because they see the importance of investing in rural places.
Well, I asked you at the outset what you're proudest of, and obviously there's an incredible long list of things that you've worked on that are really doing a lot for America's farmers and ranchers. But focusing on those opportunities for value added and a systems approach that will allow farms to prosper, as you just outlined. I could hear the spark in your voice as you were saying it, so it's great to hear. I want to jump to some questions, and I'm going to start with someone from your home state. Mary Ellen from Iowa, you have a question. Go ahead.
Am I on?
You are on.
Thank you so much, Secretary Vilsack. Mary Ellen Miller from Wayne County, Iowa. I am an elected boots-on-the-ground soil and water conservation district commissioner who is frustrated by some of your policies in the slowness of which they are enacted. Let me give you just quick 2 examples. The lead time for some of our conservation programs, how long they are in place before they're removed with penalty, are too short. In my short years as a commissioner, I experienced riparian buffer strips that the USDA paid a landowner to put in on sea slopes to protect a stream bed by planting trees. But when $8 corn came in, the penalty was so little that hurt each one of us who are in the business of protecting land. The other issue is we cannot say no to people who want to grow commodity-supported row crops on sea slopes, which are too steep. So Wayne County saw its cattle industry just disappear when $8 corn happened because the USDA would pay landowners to tear up those sea slopes and put in row crops. So we lost pasture, we lost hay, and on top of that, they tore out all the fences. Now, if they want to go back and raise cattle, we'll pay them to put the fences back in. Doesn't make sense to me. But the other thing that happened is because those sea slopes are so steep, we actually used support, taxpayer dollar support, to put in grass waterways, to put in terraces, to put in buffers so they could grow row crops on sea slopes. I need
Mary,
a USDA program that will.
Please?
I want to know why we can't. I want to know why we can't enforce with deeper penalties people getting out of these conservation programs too easily.
I appreciate you raising that issue, and it's something that I'll look into. I don't know whether the penalties are a result of the way in which the programs are structured by Congress. Obviously, the programs are essentially a matter of a law that goes into effect, and we may be operating under directions from Congress, basically in terms of how it's to be designed, or it may be a decision that we're making, and I will certainly look into it. Although I just want to correct the record is that we don't pay people to put row crops in. They obviously farmers have to make the decision for themselves as to what they think is in the best interest of their land. Your point's well taken. That we ought to take a look at whether or not there ought to be some requirement of like in CRP, that you have a certain amount of time that you have to keep things in that CRP program where you do face significant penalties. But fair question.
I want to go now to the far coast, to California. So Dwayne in California. You have a question?
Yes, Mr. Secretary. Thank you very much. My name is Dwayne Urquhart. I'm a second-generation California avocado farmer. I took notice of the fact that you have significant concern about the decline in farm-producing acreage. Whether you know or not, California has lost 50% of its avocado-producing acreage since the embargo on foreign imports was lifted back in the late 1990s at the direction of the USDA, who was supposed to be able to provide inspections and form the Hass Avocado Board to help protect the domestic industry. What I'd like to ask, Mr. Secretary, is in that legislation, there was a requirement that the Hass Avocado Board face a referendum to address the issues that were to be of concern to existing domestic avocado farmers, and that referendum has not occurred in over 23 years. Can the USDA please schedule that referendum and hopefully address other issues associated with it? Thank you.
A fair question. I don't know. This is the first time this has been brought to my attention. I don't know the answer to the question as to why the referendum hasn't taken place, but I will certainly find out.
I'm always so impressed, Mr. Secretary, by your breadth of knowledge and by the breadth of the work that the department does. It just connects to so many different things, and understandable that you you can't be familiar with every part. There's a caller from somewhere. I think he accidentally put his last name in the location, but his first name is Al, and I think he's from Colorado because his question's about Colorado. Are you there, Al?
Sure, I'm here.
All right.
My name is Al McGregor. I am in Denver, and I have a question for Mr. Secretary Vilsack.
Go ahead.
I am representing at this moment 3 organizations, 2 basically with a lot of years of experience. One is Perfect Energy. We do renewable, and in some moment we did fossil energy too. We did. And another organization is growing spaces. That is, in my opinion, the revolution of the greenhouses. We have tested sustainable greenhouses producing all year long in 11,000 feet high Colorado. Not all Colorado, but some places with 11,000 feet high, they are producing all year long citrus, tomatoes, and fruit. So the third organization is Agro Energy Farms. Obviously, the reunion of these 2 companies is creating something to help, specifically at this moment. I don't know if it will be for the whole country, but trying to help the farms in Colorado. That is what we are doing. And
So
basically,
what's your question now?
My question is if exist programs for help the small, remote, isolated farms in Colorado or in other states.
Well, there are programs to provide assistance and help to establish greenhouses and indoor facilities. I'm thinking of the REAP project. There's an opportunity potentially in that program, the Renewable Energy for America program. There is the local agricultural marketing program, the LAMP program, which provides resources for local and regionally produced foods. There is the Business and Industry Loan Program through the Rural Development Office in Colorado. So what I would suggest you folks do is is to go online, get the telephone number of the Rural Development Office in Colorado. There are offices located in Denver and throughout the state. Give them a call, and they can sit down and explain to you all the programs that we have that could potentially be used, grant programs and loan programs that might be able to assist you in financing the operations that you're seeking.
And I'll just chime in on that, not only from my experience with American Farmland Trust, but for all the work I did with farmers in Maine before then. This is an area where USDA really has come forward. I can't tell you how many farmers I know who have purchased hoop houses and built greenhouses and the like with cost share funds from USDA. And it's really an example of USDA doing so much more than it used to do to help some of the smaller farms and some of the farms that maybe are growing vegetables rather than larger commodity crops and the like. It's been a real success. I want to turn, there's a question on climate issues, and I want to turn to Klaus from Oregon. Klaus, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you. Yes.
Go ahead with your question.
Vilsack, first of all, thank you so much for making yourself available here. So I've spent, with many others, a great deal of time Sierra Club, National Grassroots Network Team, Climate Reality Project, Citizen Climate Lobby. We spend a lot of time to assist passing the Growing Climate Solutions Act, which luckily passed in the 2022 lame duck session. We lost track of what is going on with this thing. And when I'm thinking that Tesla, for example, got $6 billion in carbon offsets, I can only imagine what we could be doing with that kind of money in the agricultural sector once we can figure out how to apply it in a transparent and reasonable way. Can you give us an update on what's going on with that bill?
Yes, I can. We are in the process of soliciting information from folks in terms of there are two principal components here. One is establishing a set of standards or protocols for determining what kind of market opportunities might be available for producers that would be aligned with producer values that would be designed, if you will, for producers, making it easier for them to participate in markets. What we found is that the existing carbon market efforts have not really been tailored to the diversity and nature of agriculture generally, and have been very difficult for farmers to really participate in. So the Growing Climate Solutions Act is designed to create and direct the Department of Agriculture to establish a set of protocols that would essentially design or establish the design of markets that would be most suited for use by farmers, ranchers, and producers. We made a request for information from folks in terms of what those protocols should look like. We've received input, and we're in the process of examining that input and then determining from that point forward what the design should look like. And we're also, the second aspect of this is establishing and identifying the verifiers, the people that would be best able to be in a position to assist producers to be able to verify that a particular operation is worthy of and entitled to participation in these markets. And we're in the process now of trying to identify where those verifiers are and what criteria should be used to determine which verifiers are in fact aligned, if you will, with agriculture. In the meantime, we're also learning a great deal from the Climate Smart Agriculture Commodity Initiative, where we're working with 136 projects across all 50 states, nearly 100 commodities involved, nearly 200 climate smart practices. And we are within that system a monitoring and measuring and verifying process where we're collecting data about what works and what doesn't work over the 14,000 farms that are currently participating, and that number grows every single day. And that's going to help us, in addition to the $300 million we're investing from the Inflation Reduction Act in a USDA-led effort to establish more accurate MMRV efforts. That information is going to help create the opportunity for us to do an even better job of identifying the verifiers. There are 7 areas of particular focus. There are 7 work areas that involve the Growing Climate Solutions Act, and we are designing efforts on carbon sequestration, on greenhouse gas inventories and things of that nature as part of this initiative to ultimately fashion not only the protocols for markets, not only the appropriate entities that should be verifying compliance, but also better tools for farmers to be able to use so that they themselves can calculate what conservation practices, what activities would be best suited for their particular operation and would best enable them to take full advantage of these markets as they develop. So I think you're going to continue to see, I suspect in the not too distant future, you're going to see the protocols, our suggestion about the protocols, and then ultimately a list of verifiers, and then ultimately a list of tools that will be available. We have tools already, but I think we're going to see improved tools.
This is an area where there has been such progress in the last few years, and and I mentioned at the outset, and then you did as well, Mr. Secretary, both the investment through the Inflation Reduction Act. And the way I view that, almost $20 billion for agriculture, it was really supporting the programs that were already in the Farm Bill, already in the conservation title, and it was truly a recognition that these programs are part of the climate solution. So I sort of view that as we know what to do, we just need to do more. And then I view the Partnership for Climate Smart Commodity efforts that you just mentioned as almost sort of the R&D side of this, right? It's trying out new things, getting good data, and that's going to inform how to move forward in the future better, including how to move forward with markets. That's my maybe overly simplistic view. Comment on that. Is that a fair way to think about it?
No, I think that's a fair assessment, and I think also part of the research aspect of this is the RCPP efforts. I mean,
yes.
There's going to be some accountability there too, and so between what farmers are doing through the normal conservation programs, using the tools, and through the Climate Smart Commodities effort, we're going to have a tremendous amount of information and data. I mean, I mentioned earlier that the money from the IRA in terms of additional conservation investment, historic levels, hundreds of millions of acres will now get conservation that they didn't get or couldn't get because there simply wasn't enough money. Now, all of that is to say, this assumes that the funding continues. In other words, that we don't, as some have suggested, redirecting those resources away from climate smart, away from conservation practices, and using those resources for some other purpose. I think our goal is to make sure that we hang on to those resources and that they go for the intended purpose. And by the way, if I could go back to the earlier question about the avocado, in January of 2024, the avocado growers of California requested a motion. They passed a motion, or they proposed a motion to send a letter to me asking for the referendum. A motion failed. I'm not quite sure. There are 2 yeas, 9 nays, and 1 abstention. So the board of directors basically made the decision not to request a referendum at that point in time. So it may be that this just didn't come to my attention because that letter never got sent. But in light of the call today, we'll make sure the team takes a look at that.
That's great, and clearly you have some staff who are working behind the scenes there to give you that information. It's wonderful that you can be so responsive right during the time of this call. That's fantastic.
Actually,
I want to turn.
I actually did the research, John. Just so you know.
Oh, you are an amazing man. That's the beauty of being at a computer.
That's right.
Good stuff. I want to turn to Nashville. We have a question from Jesse in Nashville. You there, Jesse?
Yes, thank you, Secretary Vilsack and the American Farmland Trust for the chance to ask this. So I'm Jesse. I'm the Farm to Families Coordinator for Second Harvest Food Bank of Middle Tennessee, and my job is to execute the LFPA grant, Local Food Purchasing Assistance, here in Middle and West Tennessee. Now, with that first round of funding, our farmers supplied more than 1.4 million pounds of food to our neighbors. So I was really excited to see the announcement of that third round of funding, because so far here, the way we do it, this grant is a win for all involved. But I believe the best future of the local food movement is one where our farmers and the entities that purchase from them, maybe a food bank or a school district, can start making some long-term plans, knowing that this program is sustainable beyond 1 year at a time. That's probably the question I get the most from our farmers is, will this be around another year from now? So I would love to pass the answer that you give on to the diverse panel of 60-plus farms that we work with. What, if any, is the long-term vision for LFPA? What might it look like a decade from now?
Well, I appreciate the question, and it's a critical component to building a local and regional food system that basically provides a better deal in the food system to the farmer and the producer in terms of a higher percentage of the food dollar going to the farmer, as I mentioned earlier. We have funded this program through a creative use of the Commodity Credit Corporation resources that are always available to the Secretary as long as there are not restrictions on the use by the Secretary under the charter, under the CCC charter. The local food purchasing agreement, it complies with the charter, so as long as a secretary has the capacity and ability to use that funding source, and as long as they're convinced that it's a program that's working for farmers and also working for local communities and for schools and for the consumers, there's nothing preventing that from being done year after year after year. Having said that, there are some in Congress who want to restrict the ability of the Secretary to use the CCC for things like that. And they are using that method for generating savings in the Farm Bill, which they'd like to redirect in a different direction to help a subset of producers who need assistance and help. Obviously, we are opposed to that notion. So that's one caveat. The second caveat to this is these monies are funneled, if you will, through the Secretary or Commissioner of Agriculture in the states. They have the ability to structure this in a way that would last more than a single year. In fact, many states are still working on their first tranche of LFPA money, and they haven't yet tapped into additional resources. So it's how the Secretary decides to structure it. And then to your question about where does it in a decade from now, here's my vision, my hope. My hope is that that in addition to the climate smart agriculture efforts and the local and regional food system efforts, that what we see in the next Farm Bill, not this Farm Bill, but the next Farm Bill, is an institutionalization of these programs within the Farm Bill, so that we create a separate new model that gives small and mid-sized operators a choice of an entrepreneurial choice, rather than forcing them out of farming and allowing the large farms to get larger to the point where eventually we have one or two farms in every county. And that's not an exaggeration. That's where this is headed if we don't stop the bleeding. And the only way you stop the bleeding is by creating additional income sources. And one way to do that is by a local and regional food system. So my hope is that there are enough people like yourself who are asking this question, who understand the significance of it, enough producers who are benefiting from this, that they essentially educate their policymakers to say, look, this is a good program. This is a good idea. Continue to allow the Secretary to use the CCC for this purpose on a regular basis so that it doesn't run out of resources, or institutionalize it in the Farm Bill, provide resources on an ongoing basis so there is some degree of long-term predictability. But I think you're probably good for the next year or two. After that, hopefully we've made the case and that crafters of future Farm Bills incorporate it.
A real hallmark of this administration, I get the advantage of sort of sitting outside and watching what USDA is doing. A real hallmark of what you've done is focus on farms of all sizes, on recognizing the need for production agriculture, but also the real value that small and mid-sized farms play in local economies, educating people about food, diversifying income streams, and the like. And the gains that have been made are precarious, right? That's one reason why I encourage everyone who's on the call to become an AFT member, so you can stay informed of some of our action alerts and other things when these kind of issues are coming up. I want to go to Jake in Massachusetts, who has a question about the age of farmers. Jake?
Hi. Yeah. So my name is Jake Russell. I am a just recent graduate from college and a grant writer, prospective grant writer anyway. So the average age of the farmer nowadays is, from my knowledge, pretty old. It's like 65 or something. And as this generation of farmers ages out, the kids may be leaving the farms as well. How exactly will your administration facilitate and encourage a new generation of farmers to take up the trade while implementing climate smart and environmentally friendly farming practices?
A couple answers to that. First of all, there's a beginning farmer and rancher program that provides resources to get folks started. Secondly, we've established in this administration a real commitment to micro farming. Obviously, beginning farmers may have to start out very small, And oftentimes the programs, whether the loan programs or the risk management programs, are not designed for small operations. So we created a microloan program during the Obama administration, and have continued it in this administration, where producers can get up to $50,000 of income. We've asked Congress to give us the permission to raise that to $100,000. It's a 7-year loan repayment, low interest rate, very flexible. And what it does is it allows somebody to get in that farming business for a period of time, allows them to establish the credential that they would need to have to be able to get a larger operating loan from USDA. To get an operating loan from USDA, you have to show that you've been in the farming business for a period of time. That's difficult to do if you haven't been a farmer or you don't come from a farm family. But if you want to be a farmer, you get one of these microloans. You basically set up shop. You do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You come back a year or two later and say, I've done this, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They say, okay, that checks the box. Now what would you like to do? Well, I'd like to expand my operation, maybe a specialty crop operation. So there's a microloan program to get you started. There's an operating and an ownership loan program at USDA once you meet that threshold of experience. Third, and then once you get the experience and you get into the farming operation, then eventually you transition to a commercial banking arrangement where we can potentially provide a guarantee for a period of time so that your credit needs are met. We've also created a farm risk management program, a whole farm revenue program to basically provide risk management, crop insurance, if you will, sort of similar to crop insurance, to be able to provide some degree of assistance if, God forbid, you're in a circumstance and situation where, as the people in the southeast of the country are now, trying to deal with horrific storms, and your crop is destroyed, and you have no income or very little income. So we've set that up. The third thing we've done is we've created new value-added opportunities. We have a program called the Organic Transition Initiative, in which we are providing resources to a number of entities, about 150 of them across the country, where they are working with young farmers who would like to potentially be able to transition to a higher value organic proposition, but don't know how, don't know what to do. We create a mentoring relationship with an existing organic producer so you don't make the same mistakes that they may have made a long time ago. There was resources and continue to be resources to help you with the conservation requirements and the transition requirements that sometimes can be expensive. And we've also recently invested in a number of projects, nearly I think 90 projects or so, of trying to expand market opportunity for organic. So that's another opportunity. And then finally, there is the Climate Smart initiative. Part of the requirements of the contracts that we have entered into in providing resources anywhere from $250,000 to as much as potentially tens of millions of dollars in these Climate Smart commodity partnerships is to include small and historically underserved beginning farmers, veteran farmers, individuals of that sort, incorporate them into a plan. So I would encourage you, wherever you live, to go online, USDA.gov, type in the search box Climate Smart Partnerships. It'll take you to a map. Click on the map, and it will show you all of the projects that are currently available in your area, in your state, and the lead partner for each one of those projects, and see whether or not that fits what you may be thinking about doing or are doing. And maybe there's a potential there for a partnership that might help reduce some of the costs of getting involved and getting it in producing a climate smart commodity.
And I just want to add 2 thumbs up to you for having an interest in this space. We desperately need more people like you who want to get into farming. I want to go over to Washington State. Carol is there, has a question about industrial hemp. Carol, you there?
I'm here. Thank you. I want to thank Secretary Vilsack for taking this opportunity to hear questions and tell us more about what the AFT has been doing. I'm a longtime supporter of AFT and have had a bumper sticker for a couple of decades. I have a question and a concern, and it's about conservation and climate change, and what farmers are going to need to do in order to continue to survive with the changes that are happening, and they are fast. And my question is the AFT encouraging or doing any research for the growing of industrial hemp on farms?
Well, you're asking me a question rather than the Secretary a question.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm going to answer briefly, and then I do want to give the Secretary a chance to talk about whatever's going on at USDA with regard to industrial hemp. For our purposes, we are working with a few folks who are interested in hemp, but we're not ourselves doing any direct research in that space. We are beginning to do some research on biochar, and there's some early results that show that biochar might actually be a good additive at the same time that one is thinking of industrial hemp. But my knowledge there is minimal, and AFT's research in that area is minimal. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Secretary.
We've set up a regulatory process working with states to basically encourage more production of industrial hemp. In fact, just today, one of the 92 projects that we awarded RCPP resources to under the $1.5 billion we announced today is a hemp project in Pennsylvania, which is designed to assist Pennsylvania in additional compliance with their requirements to clean up the Chesapeake Bay. So there's a tremendous opportunity. And in fact, there are also, within the Climate Smart Commodity Initiative, there are, I think, 3 or 4 hemp projects. So you might want to go online and take a look at what we're doing in that space. There may be an opportunity, if you're interested in this, there may be an opportunity for you to participate in one of those projects in one of those contracts where folks are being paid to do certain practices in the production of hemp to be able to qualify that hemp product as a sustainably produced hemp. The challenge with it, I would say the challenge, John, is we still have a little bit of education to do with our friends at the Justice Department, because as you process hemp, it goes through a series of conditions, and there may be a circumstance where at some point in time in the process, the condition with reference to the THC is at a level that the Justice Department has concerns about, but at the end of the process, it's below that level. And we've created the structure under which it can be processed, and we're trying to make sure that the Justice Department doesn't say, wait a minute, because at some point in time, the process results in a higher threshold, somehow that product shouldn't be allowed. We're trying to convince them that understand that when it's all said and done, the THC amount is below a certain level, and there shouldn't be any concern on the Justice Department.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're working in that area, because could be a very useful product for industrial uses, for diversifying farm income, so many reasons. So thanks for your leadership on that and so many other things. We're winding down here. The Secretary has a busy schedule, so I want to thank him and then give him a chance for a minute or two of final comments if he has any. But what a pleasure for us to have you with us again, Secretary Vilsack. We can't thank you enough for your service to this country and for your heartfelt belief in American agriculture and its future. And it's just I can't say enough good things about the folks at USDA and what they're trying to do for the farmers and ranchers of this country. So thank you for that, and thank you for your time tonight. And now I'll turn it over to you for the last word.
Well, John, thank you. Just one other word about hemp. It's also a possible opportunity for the sustainable aviation fuel, which is a brand new opportunity for us to really help the environment, create a new industry in the country, and also create a new product line, if you will, for a number of products. We just need to get our folks at Treasury to understand the significance of opening up the tax credits that will incent that industry and make sure that agriculture is a player in that industry. Well, first of all, thank you, John, for the opportunity to be with everyone today, and certainly want to again thank AFT for the tremendous work that you do in raising awareness, in advocating for the protection of farmland, for the preservation of farmland, and for maintaining profitability for operations of all sizes. You've been a great partner, and certainly that needs to continue. I think the real challenge here is for the country as a whole to understand that we all pay a price when we force farmers off the land. We all pay a price when 155 million acres was in farming, supported families, supported small communities, supported young people who want to go in the military, supported some of the iconic landscapes of our country. And then we've essentially just over time sort of conceded that the only alternative for farms and for farmers was to get big or get out. Getting big is difficult if 85% of the income is generated under the current system by a subset of large commercial-sized operations. There's got to be a better way. And I think AFT has advocated for that better way by focusing on conservation, by focusing on entrepreneurship, by focusing on ways in which the land itself, not the farm family itself, can work more creatively, more entrepreneurially, and to generate the kind of revenue that makes it easier for small and mid-sized operations to continue. So I want to thank you for doing that. I think the challenge is for us to continue doing what we're doing, to build on the model that's been built in this administration, and to make sure that it gets incorporated in future farm bills so that farmers, ranchers, and producers have options, so that the next secretary that does one of these great calls is in a position to say, you know what, we're seeing headway here, and we're seeing more vibrant rural communities. We're seeing populations increase. We're seeing farms of all sizes dot the landscape, and there's a real sense out there in the countryside that people have an opportunity to do what they love to do, and they're able to pass it on to the next generation as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Such progress has been made. So much more work to do, but such progress in the last few years. Thank you again, Secretary Vilsack. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Lucy.
Thanks, John. There were so many great questions this evening that we didn't get to have time to get to tonight, but we still want to hear from you. Please stay on the line after the event, and you'll be able to record a message for us. Thank you all so much for your time. Good night.